was a cold and lonely evening on the far border of Sector 9. The wind carried dust and whispers through the gray valley, where metal fences and dim lights marked the end of human land. Lieutenant Aaron Miles walked slowly through the silence, his boots crunching against the frozen ground. He had been on patrol for hours, checking scanners, marking reports, and keeping his thoughts locked behind his soldiers' discipline. His job was simple: protect the border, watch for intruders, and never let emotion guide his decisions. But that night was not like the others. Something felt different in the air. The scanner in his hand beeped softly, showing a faint signal just beyond the fence line. It wasn't strong, almost like a dying heartbeat. Aaron frowned and adjusted the screen, thinking it might be a glitch. But the signal appeared again, steady this time. Someone or something was out there. He turned off his helmet light and moved carefully through the mist. The wind grew colder, and the scent of damp earth filled the air. His training told him to call it in immediately, but curiosity pressed harder than caution. He followed the signal until he reached the marshland, a quiet stretch where water reflected the pale moonlight. There, lying half-buried in mud and reeds, was a figure. At first, Aaron thought it was a fallen soldier, but as he stepped closer, the light from his wristband revealed smooth, silvery skin that shimmered faintly under the moon. She wasn't human. Her face was calm but pale, her breathing weak and uneven. A broken communication badge hung from her neck, the symbol of an alien faction that had once traded peacefully with humans. Aaron froze. His orders were clear: report any alien found near the border. Yet as he looked down at her, barely alive and covered in wounds, something inside him shifted. He had seen enemies before, but none looked this helpless. She wasn't holding a weapon. Her hands were trembling, trying to pull herself up, whispering words he couldn't understand. "Stay still," Aaron said softly, lowering his weapon. He reached for his med kit and began checking her pulse. Her skin was warm but trembling. "You're hurt," he muttered, more to himself than to her. She blinked slowly, her strange silver eyes meeting his. Her voice was weak but melodic. "Please, help." "No soldiers," she whispered. Aaron hesitated. If anyone found out he had helped her, his career would be over. Yet he couldn't walk away. He tore a strip from his own uniform and wrapped it around her arm where she was bleeding. She winced but didn't resist. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Liraya," she said, her accent soft, almost musical. "I ran. No more war." Her words confused him, but her tone was clear. She wasn't here to fight. She was running from something. He looked around. The scanners would soon detect the heat of two bodies in the area. If the search drones passed overhead, she'd be caught or worse. "Can you walk?" he asked. Liraya tried but stumbled. Aaron caught her before she fell, feeling how light she was, like she hadn't eaten in days. He took a deep breath, knowing what he was about to do could cost him everything. "All right," he said. "Come with me." He led her through the shadows, away from the patrol route, following a path he knew well. A narrow trail that led to an old watch post, long abandoned after the last border conflict. The structure was half broken, covered in rust, but it offered shelter. Inside, he laid her down on a cot and gave her some water from his pack. She drank slowly, her trembling hands barely able to hold the bottle. Aaron checked the door locks, then sat near the small heater that still worked. He removed his helmet, his dark hair damp with sweat, and looked at her. She was unlike any alien he had seen. Her skin reflected light softly. Her eyes seemed alive with shifting colors, and her breathing steadied as the warmth spread through the room. "You shouldn't be here," he said, breaking the silence. "If they find you, they'll—" "I know," she interrupted, her voice faint but firm. "I had no choice. My people betrayed war again." Aaron frowned. He remembered reports about growing tensions between human settlers and alien groups. But the news never told the full truth. "You crossed the border alone?" he asked. Liraya nodded weakly. "I had to. I don't want to fight anymore." There was a long pause between them, filled only by the hum of the heater. Aaron wasn't sure what to say. Everything he had been taught said she was dangerous, but his heart didn't agree. She looked too tired, too lost to be a threat. He handed her a ration bar. "Eat this slowly." Liraya hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Thank you. Human." Her way of saying the word made him feel strange, like she was speaking to something more than just his species, like she was speaking to his soul. For the first time in years, Aaron felt seen, not as a soldier, but as a person. The hours passed quietly. Outside, the wind howled and the night deepened. Inside, the two strangers sat in silence, their lives suddenly tangled by fate. Aaron watched her drift to sleep, her breathing slow and steady. He turned off the lamp and stared at the faint glow of the moon through the broken window. He knew he had just broken military law by helping her. If his superiors found out, there would be no second chances. But as he looked at her resting peacefully, he told himself something he hadn't said in years. Sometimes the right thing isn't written in the rulebook. Aaron leaned back against the cold wall and listened to the quiet rhythm of her breathing. Somewhere deep inside, a feeling he couldn't name began to grow, a strange mixture of fear, curiosity, and something warmer that he didn't want to admit. He didn't know who she really was or what tomorrow would bring. All he knew was that he couldn't abandon her, not tonight. And so, under the flickering light of a dying heater, the soldier and the alien shared the same silence, both unaware that this fragile act of kindness would soon change their lives forever. The night faded into a soft gray morning. Thin rays of light slipped through the cracks of the broken roof, touching the corners of the abandoned watchpost. Aaron woke up with his rifle beside him, his body stiff from sleeping against the wall. For a few seconds he forgot where he was. Then his eyes landed on her, Lariah. She was still asleep, her breathing calm and quiet. Her silvery skin reflected the sunlight like faint ripples on water. Aaron rubbed his eyes and checked his wrist scanner. No alerts yet. That meant no one had discovered the missing patrol report. Still, time was running out. He knew sooner or later someone at the base would notice something was off. He thought about what excuse he could give if questioned, but nothing felt believable. He sighed, stood up, and warmed some instant meal packets over a small heating plate. The smell of the food filled the small space. When Lariah stirred and slowly opened her eyes, she looked around as if trying to remember how she had gotten there. "You're safe," Aaron said quietly. For now. Her lips curved into a faint smile. "You didn't leave me." "I couldn't," he replied, though his voice carried the weight of that choice. He handed her a cup of warm broth. "Here, drink this. You need strength." She accepted it with shaking hands. "Your people don't usually help mine," she said softly, watching him carefully. Aaron didn't know what to say. "Maybe not," he finally answered, "but I'm not like most people." For a while, there was only the sound of wind outside. Then she spoke again, almost to herself. "In my home, we believed all hearts beat under the same sky. But wars change hearts. They make people forget what kindness feels like." Her words hit something deep inside him. He had seen kindness disappear during years of conflict, between soldiers, between neighbors, even within himself. Duty had become a wall that kept him from feeling too much. But now, sitting across from her, that wall was cracking. Later that day, Aaron helped Lariah stand and move around. She was weak but determined. He noticed the small glowing marks along her arms, symbols that seemed to pulse gently like living tattoos. "What are those?" he asked, curious. She looked at them and smiled faintly. "Memory marks. Our history lives in us. Each glow holds a story from our ancestors." Aaron was fascinated. "So, every person from your kind carries stories on their skin?" "Yes," she said, her tone calm but proud. "When we are born, we carry the memories of our people. When we die, our light returns to the stars." He didn't understand it completely, but he liked the way she said it. It made him think about how humans often forgot their past or twisted it for power. Maybe her people were wiser than the stories claimed. As evening approached, Lariah sat near the window, looking out at the fading light. "Why do you stay here, human?" she asked. Aaron hesitated. "Because I made an oath," he said slowly. "To protect the border, to follow orders, to keep peace." She turned to face him, her eyes shining softly. "But who are you protecting it from?" That question stayed in his mind long after she stopped speaking. Who was he really protecting? The people who made the rules? The soldiers who followed them blindly? Or the ones who were just trying to survive, like her? Night came again. The heater flickered weakly and a storm began outside, making the old metal walls rattle. Aaron sat near her, checking his communicator. He couldn't send a signal without risk, so he turned it off completely. Lariah watched him with quiet curiosity. "You miss your people," she said. "Maybe," Aaron replied. "But sometimes, even among them, I feel alone." She nodded slowly. "Alone," she repeated. "That is something both our kinds share." There was a gentle silence after that, filled with understanding instead of words. After a while, she spoke again, her voice softer this time. Back in my village before the war, we used to sing to the stars. We believed they could hear us. Every night I sang with my family. I don't know if they still live. Her voice trembled slightly and she looked down. Aaron wanted to say something to comfort her, but the words felt heavy on his tongue. Instead, he reached into his pocket and handed her a small metal charm, a token he always carried. Here, he said. It's from my sister. She gave it to me before I left for my first mission. She said it would remind me to come home. Lyria looked at it with wide eyes. Home, she whispered. That's a word that hurts and heals. She placed her hand over his, closing his fingers around the charm. Keep it, you still need to find your home. Aaron felt his heart tighten. It had been years since anyone spoke to him with such simple kindness. Most people saw him as a soldier, not as a man with feelings or memories, but Lyria saw him differently. Later that night, the storm grew louder. They sat close to the heater, the dim orange glow dancing on their faces. Lyria seemed lost in thought, then turned to him suddenly. Her eyes met his, and she said in a quiet voice that felt like a sigh, We'd make beautiful children, human. Aaron froze. The words weren't spoken like a flirtation. They carried sadness, maybe even longing, a wish for peace, for a world where humans and her kind could live without fear. He didn't know how to respond. His duty screamed that this was wrong, too close, too personal. But his heart told him there was truth in her words. She smiled softly, seeing his silence. Don't be afraid, she whispered. It's only a dream that maybe one day our kinds will not need walls. Aaron looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, he didn't see an alien. He saw a being with hope, with pain, with the same longing for connection that lived inside him. When she fell asleep later, her head resting lightly against the wall, Aaron sat awake. His thoughts raced between loyalty and emotion. He was a soldier, sworn to duty, but duty had never felt so heavy. Outside, the storm slowly faded. Inside, a quiet bond was forming, one that neither of them had planned, but both could feel growing stronger. Aaron didn't know what would happen next. All he knew was that something had changed inside him forever, and as the wind died down, he whispered to himself, What am I doing? But deep down, he already knew the answer. He was following his heart, even if it led him away from everything he'd ever known. The morning came quietly, with fog covering the valley and soft rain falling on the metal roof. Aaron stood outside the old watchpost, scanning the horizon with his binoculars. The border lights in the distance blinked faintly and everything seemed calm, but deep inside he felt uneasy. He knew the silence before a storm. For 4 days now he had hidden Lyria there. Every night she grew a little stronger, and every morning he told himself he would report her, but he never did. Something about her, her calm voice, her quiet eyes, kept him from making that call. Still, his soldier's mind couldn't rest. Someone would notice his altered patrol records soon. Someone would start asking questions. When he stepped back inside, Lyria was sitting by the heater, holding his scanner. I didn't mean to touch it, she said softly. I was only curious. It's fine, Aaron replied, forcing a small smile. You just can't press any buttons. They'll know. They, she asked. My people. The command center. They monitor everything. Lyria nodded slowly, understanding. That must be difficult. To live under constant watch? Aaron laughed quietly. It's what I signed up for. You get used to it. But you don't look used to it, she said, her tone calm but sharp. Her words struck him. She was right, he wasn't used to it anymore. Once he had believed in orders and missions, in following rules to keep the peace. But now with her sitting there, the meaning of peace felt different. Peace wasn't a border or a wall. It was this small moment, this fragile safety they shared. Before he could respond, his communicator beeped softly. He froze. It was a message from Captain Reeves, his superior officer. Lieutenant Miles, report immediately. Patrol logs show irregular activity near your sector. Possible interference. Confirm your status. Aaron's stomach tightened. He turned the device off. They're looking, he said under his breath. Lyria looked up, her expression worried. They know? Not yet, he replied. But they will soon. He began pacing the small room. His mind raced through options. Move her deeper into the forest, destroy the scanner records, or maybe send a false report. But every plan had risk. I can't hide you here much longer, he said finally. They'll send drones to scan the area. Then I should leave, Lyraya said simply. Aaron stopped. You can't. You're still weak and the border drones will spot you in seconds. I will not bring trouble to you, she said quietly, standing despite her trembling legs. You have already done too much. Aaron stepped closer, frustration mixing with worry. You think I can just let you walk out there? They'll take you. Or worse. She looked up at him, her silver eyes steady. Then why did you save me? The question silenced him. He had asked himself that same thing every night. Why had he saved her? Because she was helpless? Because he wanted to believe there was still good in the world? Or because he had started to care? I don't know, he admitted finally. But I did. And I'm not letting you die now. There was a long pause. Then Lyraya sat down again, her expression soft. You're a strange soldier, Aaron Miles. He gave a small, tired smile. Yeah, I've heard that before. Hours passed quietly after that. The rain turned heavier and thunder rolled over the valley. Lyraya traced shapes on the fogged window, lost in thought. Aaron sat nearby, cleaning his rifle, though his mind wasn't really on the weapon. He was thinking about Reeves, his old mentor, the man who had taught him everything about loyalty and command. If Reeves discovered what he'd done, it wouldn't just be a warning, it would be punishment. Severe punishment. By afternoon, the sound of engines echoed in the distance. Aaron rushed to the window. Through the rain, he saw faint shadows moving. A search team. Drones hovered above them, their blue lights blinking like eyes in the mist. They're coming, he said quickly. Lyraya stood. Then I must go. No, Aaron said firmly. You can't move fast enough. There's another way. He pulled a blanket from the corner and covered her with it. Stay silent. Don't move until I say. He ran outside and climbed the small hill behind the post. The search team was about 2 kilometers away. He turned on his communicator, pretending to be on a routine patrol. Lieutenant Miles here. Confirming perimeter check. No visual contact, no heat signals. Reeves's voice came through deep and sharp. Copy that, Lieutenant. But your data logs show interference last night. Explain that. Aaron swallowed hard. Storm interference, sir. Electrical distortion. I'll recheck the grid manually. There was a pause. Fine. Report back in 1 hour. And Miles, don't make me come out there myself. The signal cut off. Aaron exhaled shakily. He had bought some time. When he returned to the watch post, Lyraya was still hidden under the blanket, her breathing steady. They'll be gone soon, he whispered. But we can't stay here after that. She looked up, her voice low. Where will we go? There's a neutral zone past the ridge, he said. Old supply tunnels from the First Colony War. If we make it there, the scanners can't track us. Lyraya nodded slowly. Then we go tonight. Aaron looked at her. Her calmness amazed him. Even with danger closing in, she didn't panic. You really trust me that much? He asked quietly. She smiled faintly. You could have left me many times, but you didn't. That tells me more than your words ever could. That night, when the rain finally stopped, they packed what little they had. Some food, water, a flashlight, and Aaron's weapon. The sky was dark and heavy, but stars peeked faintly through the clouds. As they stepped outside, Lyraya stopped and looked up. Your sky is different, she said softly. But the stars, they still listen. Aaron glanced at her. You really believe that? Yes, she whispered. Because they heard me the night you found me. He didn't reply. But those words stayed in his heart as they began their walk toward the ridge. The mud was deep, the air cold, but they moved silently through the shadows. In the distance, search drones hovered over the valley, scanning beams cutting through the darkness. Aaron led her carefully, choosing the paths he knew best. Every step felt like a choice between two worlds, duty and feeling, command and compassion. By the time they reached the ridge, his communicator buzzed again, but he ignored it. He knew the cost of silence. He also knew he could never turn her in. When they reached a cluster of rocks, Lyraya paused and looked back at him. You risk everything for someone you barely know, she said softly. Maybe I needed to remember I'm still human, Aaron answered. For the first time, she smiled fully, her eyes glowing faintly in the starlight. Then I'm glad I met you, human. They kept walking toward the darkness beyond the ridge, unaware that far behind them, Captain Reeves had already ordered a full-scale search. And for the first time in his life, Aaron wasn't thinking about orders or ranks. He was thinking about one thing only, keeping her safe no matter what it cost him. The night was silent except for the crunch of their footsteps on wet soil. Aaron and Lariah moved carefully through the dark valley, staying close to the rocks to avoid the searchlights that swept across the land. The stars shone dimly above them, half hidden by drifting clouds. Aaron could feel his heart beating fast, not from fear but from the weight of what he was doing. He was no longer a soldier following orders. He was a man making a choice he could never take back. Lariah walked behind him, her soft footsteps barely making a sound. She was tired, her breathing uneven, but she didn't complain. Every now and then, Aaron looked back to make sure she was keeping up. When they reached the top of a small ridge, he stopped and pointed toward the distant horizon. "There," he whispered. "Beyond that line of trees is the neutral zone. Once we cross it, they can't legally touch us." Lariah followed his gaze, her silver eyes reflecting the faint moonlight. "And after that?" she asked softly. Aaron hesitated. "After that? I don't know." They both stood quietly for a while. The wind brushed against them, carrying the scent of wet earth. In that stillness, Aaron realized how strange it felt to be free of orders, free of rules. But freedom came with danger. He knew that Captain Reeves wouldn't stop searching until he found him. They started moving again, but halfway down the ridge, a sharp buzzing sound filled the air. Aaron froze, a drone. He pulled Lariah down behind a rock just as a blue scanning beam swept across the ground. The drone hovered, scanning the area with precision. Aaron held his breath, his hand gripping his rifle tightly. Lariah's hand brushed his, trembling. The moment felt endless. Finally, the drone drifted away toward the north, its light fading into the mist. Aaron exhaled slowly. "That was close," he whispered. Lariah nodded, her face pale. "They're getting closer," she said. "Yes," he replied, his jaw tightening. "Which means Reeves is leading the search himself." He helped her stand, and they continued walking. The sky began to lighten with early dawn. The rain had stopped, and thin fog wrapped around the trees like ghostly smoke. Aaron's uniform was soaked and dirty, but he didn't care. He had one goal now: get Lariah to safety. As they neared the forest line, a sudden voice echoed through the comm on his wrist. "Lieutenant Miles, this is Captain Reeves. We've traced your last signal. Stop where you are." Aaron's chest tightened. He turned off the device immediately. Lariah looked at him in alarm. "They found us?" "Yes," he said quickly. "We need to move faster." They ran through the trees, branches whipping against them. The sound of engines grew louder behind them, vehicles closing in. Aaron grabbed Lariah's hand and led her toward a rocky slope that descended into a ravine. "Down there," he shouted. They slid down the wet rocks, landing near a stream. But before they could move further, bright lights flashed from above. Dozens of soldiers appeared on the ridge, weapons drawn. Aaron's heart sank. Reeves's voice boomed through a loudspeaker. "Aaron Miles, you are under arrest for aiding a foreign enemy. Step away from her." Aaron looked up and saw Reeves standing tall, his armor shining under the floodlights. Reeves's expression was cold but not cruel. It was disappointment. "Sir, she's not an enemy," Aaron shouted. "She's unarmed and she's not part of any threat." "Don't make this worse, Lieutenant," Reeves replied. "You've already crossed too many lines." "Step aside now." Lariah looked at Aaron, her eyes full of fear. "You should go," she whispered. "If you surrender, they might forgive you." "No," Aaron said firmly. "I won't leave you." Reeves motioned for his men to advance. "Take them both," he ordered. Aaron stepped in front of Lariah, his rifle raised but not aimed. "Sir, please." "You don't understand." Reeves's tone hardened. "You're forcing me to act, Aaron." Before either of them could move, a shot rang out. Not from Aaron, but from one of the soldiers. The bullet struck the rock beside them, sending fragments flying. Lariah gasped and stumbled back. Aaron turned toward her, panic rising in his chest. "Stop!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the valley. "Cease fire." The soldiers hesitated, but Reeves didn't lower his weapon. He stared down at Aaron. "You've changed, Miles. I trained you to protect humans, not betray them." Aaron's eyes burned. "Protect them from what, sir? From people like her who just want peace?" Reeves said nothing. The silence stretched painfully long. Then suddenly a bright light flared from behind Aaron. He turned to see Lariah standing tall despite her weakness, her hands glowing with a gentle white radiance. The air shimmered around her like heat over sand. "What are you doing?" Aaron whispered. Her voice was calm but full of sorrow. "You gave me your kindness. Now I will give you my freedom." The light grew brighter, so bright that the soldiers shielded their eyes. Reeves shouted, "Hold your fire!" But it was too late. The valley exploded with white brilliance. The sound faded into silence. When the light dimmed, the soldiers found themselves blinded for a moment. The scanner readings went blank. Reeves blinked, trying to regain his sight. "Report!" he barked, no response. The air was still. When the mist cleared, only Aaron was standing by the stream. His weapon was on the ground and his face was pale with shock. Liraya was gone. All that remained was a small pendant lying on the rocks, a faintly glowing crystal pulsing like a heartbeat. Reeves slowly walked down the slope, his expression unreadable. "Where is she?" he demanded. Aaron stared at the pendant in his hand, his voice trembling. "She's gone. She saved me." Reeves looked around, scanning the area. "You've broken every code in the book, Miles. You'll be court-martialed for this." Aaron didn't answer. He just held the pendant tightly. "Do what you have to do, sir." Reeves sighed deeply. There was a flicker of sadness in his eyes, but he gave the order anyway. "Take him back." The soldiers moved in, surrounding Aaron, but he didn't resist. His gaze stayed on the pendant. It was warm in his hand, glowing softly, as if her presence still lingered within it. As they led him away, Aaron looked back one last time at the place where the light had been. The stream still flowed quietly, untouched by the chaos that had just happened. He whispered under his breath, "You kept your promise." Reeves walked beside him in silence, both men knowing that something greater than rules had just taken place, something neither of them could fully explain. That night, under a sky filled with stars, Aaron sat in the transport vehicle with his wrists bound and the pendant hidden in his palm. Outside, the world looked calm again, but inside him, everything had changed. He didn't know where they had taken her, or if she still lived somewhere beyond the stars. But he knew one thing: Liraya had given him more than he ever gave her. She had reminded him what it meant to be human, and even as the engines roared and the baselights came into view, he couldn't help but smile sadly, whispering her name into the cold air. Liraya. Years passed quietly after that night. The stars still shone above Sector 9, but for Aaron Miles, the world had lost much of its light. He lived far away from the border now, in a small wooden house on a lonely hill. The military had discharged him after months of questioning. The report said he was mentally unfit for service. They never wrote the truth that he had disobeyed orders to save someone not of his kind. He never argued. He didn't even fight to clear his name. He simply left the base with nothing but his memories, and Liraya's glowing pendant, which he always kept close. Life after the army was simple but quiet. Aaron worked as a repairman in a small settlement, fixing machines and farming tools. He spoke little and kept to himself. The people in town respected him but didn't really know him. Some said he was a war hero. Others called him a deserter. Aaron didn't correct anyone. He had no energy left for explanations. At night, when the fields were silent and the stars filled the sky, he would sit on his porch and look upward. The pendant always lay in his hand, its soft light fading and returning like a living heartbeat. He often whispered into the night, "I hope you found peace out there," but sometimes he wondered if she was still alive somewhere, on another world, or in the endless sky that she had once said listened to all hearts. One evening, after a long day of work, Aaron was fixing an old generator when a small boy came running through the gate. The boy looked about 8 or 9, wearing a dusty brown coat and carrying a small travel bag. He stopped in front of Aaron's house and looked up, his eyes wide. Aaron frowned slightly. "Hey there," he said gently. "You lost, kid?" The boy shook his head slowly. "No, sir. I was told to find you." Aaron wiped the grease from his hands. "Find me? Who told you that?" The boy stepped closer. His skin was pale, his hair dark, but his eyes, Aaron froze when he saw them. They shimmered faintly, silver with shades that changed when they caught the light. "Just like hers, my mother told me," the boy said quietly. "She said when I got here I should show you this." He opened his small hand and revealed a pendant, an identical crystal to the one Aaron carried. Aaron's heart stopped for a moment. He slowly reached into his pocket, pulling out his own pendant. The two crystals glowed the same soft light, pulsing in harmony. His voice shook. Your mother. What's her name, son?" The boy smiled faintly. "She said her name was Liraya." Aaron felt his knees weaken and he had to sit down on the porch step. He stared at the pendant in his hand, then at the child. The boy's expression was calm but kind, like hers had been. His voice carried the same quiet strength. "She told me you would keep me safe," the boy said, stepping closer. "She said you helped her when no one else would." Aaron's throat tightened. He couldn't find words. Where did she go?" he finally managed to ask. The boy looked toward the sky. "She said she couldn't stay. She said her people still needed her, but she wanted me to live among humans to learn from both worlds." Aaron took a deep breath. His eyes stung, but he didn't cry. He looked at the boy again, seeing pieces of both worlds in him, his mother's grace and something deeply human in his expression. He smiled softly. "What's your name?" The boy hesitated. "She called me Aaron." Aaron nodded slowly. "That's a strong name." The boy tilted his head. "You sound like her when you say it." Aaron laughed quietly for the first time in years. He invited the boy inside, warmed some soup, and listened as Aaron told small details about a quiet world filled with silver rivers and blue forests, about people who could remember their ancestors through light, and about a mother who often looked toward the stars and whispered a name she never forgot. That name was Aaron's. When Aaron finished eating, he looked around the small home with curiosity. "You live alone?" Aaron nodded. "Yes, for a long time now." The boy studied him for a moment, then smiled. "Not anymore." Those words filled the room with a strange warmth. Aaron didn't know how it happened, whether Lurea had survived, whether she had sent the boy through some hidden path, or whether fate itself had brought him here. But it didn't matter. What mattered was that a part of her still lived. In the following weeks, Aaron stayed with Aaron. They repaired machines together, planted vegetables, and sometimes sat outside to watch the stars. The boy was full of questions about humans, about Earth, about life. Aaron answered every one he could, often smiling when he saw Lurea's curiosity in him. Sometimes, when Aaron laughed, Aaron could almost hear her voice again. One night, as they sat under the sky, Aaron turned to him and asked, "Did you love her?" Aaron looked at the stars before replying. "Yes," he said softly. "But it wasn't the kind of love people talk about. It was something deeper. She reminded me what it means to care, even when the world says you shouldn't." Aaron nodded, thoughtful. "She said you had a good heart. That's why she trusted you." Aaron smiled faintly. "She had more faith in me than I had in myself." The boy leaned against him, tired. "She also said the stars remember everything," he murmured sleepily. Aaron looked up at the endless sky, glowing softly above the hills. "Then they remember her too," he whispered. Years continued to pass, and the small house on the hill became a place of peace. Aaron grew taller and stronger, learning about both his heritages. He learned how to repair machines, how to speak to people, and how to listen to the wind. He often told Aaron stories about his mother's world, stories that sounded like dreams but felt real. One evening, as they watched the sunset, Aaron asked, "Do you think she'll ever come back?" Aaron smiled gently. "Maybe not in the way we expect, but she's never really gone. Every time we look at the stars, she's there." Aaron nodded, holding his pendant close. Its light pulsed softly, just like the one Aaron wore around his neck. As darkness fell, Aaron placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "She once said we'd make beautiful children," he said quietly. "I didn't understand what she meant then, but now I do." Aaron looked at him with a warm smile. She was right. The two sat in silence, watching the sky. The stars glowed brighter that night, as if listening once again. Aaron felt peace for the first time in years. He realized that duty hadn't failed him, nor had love betrayed him. They had simply led him to this moment, a life where both worlds met, not in war or fear, but in understanding. And as he closed his eyes, he could almost hear her voice again in the wind, soft and familiar. "You kept your promise, human." He smiled faintly, whispering back, "And you kept yours." Above them, the stars shimmered brighter, like two hearts beating in the same sky, across worlds bound forever by kindness that never died.